Welcome to How to Become a Production SQL Database Administrator. My name is Raphael. We're now going to discuss three types of permissions: grant, deny, and revoke. So let's begin. So what does the grant mean? Well, when you grant a permission, this allows the principal to perform a specific action. When you deny a permission, the denies permissions to a login, or a principal actually denies that permission. And when you revoke a permission, you're basically removing the grant or deny permission to the securable that you may have given a grant to. And this will become very clear as we begin. One thing to note is that a deny will overwrite a grant. This means that if a user is denied permission, they cannot inherit a grant from another source, even if he's part of a role. And I'll illustrate that in a second. And then finally, I'm going to give you a script that allows you to view all your permissions with each user's logins and Windows users. So let's begin. So let's move to our SQL environment and begin. As you'll notice on the left-hand pane, again, I'm using an administrative account, which is me. And then I've got two logins. One is Peter and one is Robert. And if we go to the database for Peter and go to AdventureWorks and go to tables and refresh, obviously we can't see anything here. And same thing with Robert. If he goes to AdventureWorks and looks at the tables, he can't view any tables. But obviously they can access the database itself as they are part of the users. So now we're going to start looking at how these permissions apply. So demonstration of grant, deny, revoke permissions on tables. So the first thing I'm going to do using a SQL command actually is I'm going to grant select to Peter on table department. And I'm going to grant a select statement, meaning they can view the table, to Robert. So I'm going to highlight these, and you've seen me use this before. So basically use AdventureWorks Go, and then I'm going to say grant select on the table that I want them to access, in this case human resources to Peter, and human resources department to Robert. So both of these logins will now be able to view those that table. So let's start. So if I highlight and execute, and now if I go to database and AdventureWorks for Peter, and if I highlight, he'll be able to see that one particular table, and so will Robert. And if he highlights and refreshes, great. So now I've granted them that they're able to view that table and select. So select means that they can run a select statement. Okay, wonderful. So let's go back here. Now continuing on. So now I'm going to grant a select statement on table 2 to Peter and Robert. One thing I want you to note is that even though I've written separate commands to give select statements to the various tables, I don't have to necessarily do that. I can grant multiple users the same command, just separating them by a comma. So in this particular case now, I'm going to be giving both Peter and Robert the select statement on the employee table this time. So this will illustrate that you don't have to necessarily copy this. You can just add the logins here if you want. So if I now execute this, and if I go to Robert and highlight the tables, he should be able to view two tables, which he does. And same thing for Peter. Let's refresh. And so far so good. So now we understand what grant simply does. It just allows them to perform an action, whatever that action may be. In this case, it's select. So now we're going to talk about revoke. Revoke basically removes or revokes whatever permission you've given to them. In this case, we've given them grant select, and now I'm going to remove the select permission. So the command is revoke select on employee table to both of these two logins now. So now I'm going to remove basically the select statement, so they will not be able to view employee table. They should be able to see department. So if I execute this and I highlight this, one table will disappear as it should. Same thing for Robert. So now you know how to revoke. Revoke simply removes the property that's been granted. So now I'm going to do the same thing for removing for department. And now if I refresh it, now they don't have any tables whatsoever, which is exactly what I want at this point, just to illustrate this. So now you know what revoke does. So now I'm going to add Peter to the role database reader. Thus he can view all the tables. Remember what a role is, that anyone who joins a role has that property. And the property of the database reader role is that they can view all the tables, not just specific ones. So now I'm going to add Peter to that role. So it's alter, role, role name, add member, Peter. So if I execute this, he's part of that member. And now if I go to Peter, where he couldn't see any tables whatsoever before this, now he can view all the tables. So let's just refresh it. And there we go. And when we say he can do a select, he can actually run against any table a select statement because he's part of that database reader group. So now the important thing comes in to the deny. So this is an important concept to understand. He is a member of the role called database reader, and as you can see, he can view all the tables as he is such a member. Now I'm going to give him the deny. So what I'm going to do is, before I give him the deny permission, if you look at the products table right here, if I right click, select everything, he can actually run a select statement against the product table because he's a member of that group. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to deny him the select statement, meaning he should not be able to view this table. So this illustrates that once you get a deny, it supersedes any role membership or individual membership that you have for a product. So now I'm going to execute this, and I've denied him now the ability to view products table, even though he's a member of a database role. So let's see if that's true. So remember, he could view this and run this against. Now if I execute, it should be select permission is denied. So just take a note of that this is what I mean by deny, that even if you're a member of a role, if a deny is being given to you, you cannot access that thing. So revoke. So now I'm going to revoke select on product, which I've already done here. So now what I'm going to do is, and remember, he can still review the other ones. It's only that one table that I've taken him out of. So now what I'm going to do is, now he's a member, there's Peter. He's a member of that group. Now I'm going to remove that, I'm going to remove Peter from that member, from that database role. And the command is as follows: drop member from the role database administrator. So remember, Peter can view all these tables, and as soon as I take him out of that role by dropping him, he will no longer be able to view any of these tables as he did. So the statement is use the database, alter, role, the role in question, and then drop member Peter. So if I highlight this now, he should no longer be able to view any of the tables whatsoever. So now if I go here, refresh for Peter, and if I refresh the tables again, you'll see that suddenly he cannot access any of the tables. So this is another way of denying a membership. So now we're going to talk about server roles. So in this particular case, I'm going to create a server role. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to go securities, server logins, refresh it, and you'll see there's no user-defined server role. So I'm going to create one right now. And there it is. So if I refresh this, you'll see the server role has been created right there. In that server role, I'm going to add both Peter and Robert. So basically the command is alter server role name, add member, and then followed by the login, in this case Peter, in this case Robert. So if I execute that, now they're members of there. If I highlight this and double click it, you'll see that they're being added. So now let me look at where they are. So if you look at here, so now that they're a member of that role, and if I drop down to databases, you can see that he can view all the databases here. And so can Robert. Robert can view all the databases. Now what I'm going to do, because they're a part of that role, I'm going to deny them so they can not see any of the databases whatsoever. And this is a good thing to do in the production environment, because we don't want users to have access to any databases whatsoever unless they have that specific database in mind. So in this case, I'm going to deny them even viewing the database. So if I execute this, go deny view any database to the server role and execute it. And now if I go back to this, to Peter, and if I highlight this, if I go to the databases and refresh, I should not see. Suddenly all the databases have disappeared, and I can even eliminate the system databases. And same thing with Robert. He should not be able to view any databases as soon as I refresh. So there we go. One more thing now. So lastly, let me look at this script. If I execute this script, it'll give you the status of each login. So look at Peter here. Right now he can just, he's able to connect, and that's what I've been granting him. And same thing with Robert. I've granted them both to connect to the server. So now what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to disconnect both of them. So here I'm going to deny connection to both Peter and Robert using deny connect to. As soon as I execute this, and if I go here and here, actually I don't have any databases. I've denied them the database access, but I've already removed them access. So I'm going to grant them access again. And then finally what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop both of these guys from the server role. So now I'm going to say alter server role name, drop member Peter, drop member Robert. So now they no longer belong to that server role that prohibited them from viewing any databases. So if I execute this and go back here and refresh, they'll be able to see the databases again. And now actually if I go back here and if I deny them grant connect, they should no longer to be able to grant any connections. So let's see if that's the case. Now if I go here, refresh, and well actually it's the database AdventureWorks. So if I go to AdventureWorks, you'll see they no longer have access. So it's specifically the database, since I've used that database. Same thing with here. He can no longer access that database, which previously he could. So this gives you an illustration of, let me look at the script and I'll give you that one also. This is a great script to have. So this gives you an illustration of the permissions grant, deny, and revoke and their capabilities. So one thing to remember, if you're trying to provide access or give them use the word grant. If you want to revoke what you've given to them, use the word revoke. And then if you want to completely deny them access to any of the objects or objects, then use the keyword deny. But remember, deny supersedes even a membership in a role that may have a select or a grant statement. So I think I'm going to leave it here. This will give you an illustration of how to do this. And you should work with these commands and work a little more on your own and try to get an understanding of what the principle of security is. So this gives you a brief illustration of how to manage individuals and logins using these permissions. So I'll leave it there, and in the next video I'll be wrapping the security part with how to give you the best practices of securing the entire database server itself. So I'll leave it here. So my name is Raphael, and this is how to become a production SQL database administrator.